All right, welcome to Building a Web App with RAG and ChatGPT Part 4. In this video, we're going to go ahead and round out the rest of this RAG ChatGPT or RAG model class we've been working on, and then we will actually get connected to OpenAI's APIs and start, talking to ChatGPT with our model here, hopefully. So we're going to start with our load embeddings. So last time we ran through this, we had just generated a text chunks and embeddings.df, and we made this an asynchronous model where we're loading everything into text chunks and embeddings, and then we're processing all of those files separately, and we're doing that primarily for latency, so that we don't have an application that takes 5 minutes to start up as it processes all the books every time. So we've generated and saved our file. Now we need to set up our load embeddings method here. So in load embeddings, we are going to start with our text chunks and embeddings df equals pd.read.csv. And this is one of the cool things about using pandas, is now we have our it's a standard interface. We can just load it directly back in and be back to that same pandas data frame. So we called this text chunks and embeddings .df or underscore df.csv. I think we did. Let's go look at we did not. We did .df. Let's go ahead and fix that, and then we can just reference self.embeddings df save path. All right. Now we need to convert it to a NumPy array. So for that, we're going to say text chunks and embeddings df embedding equals text chunks and embeddings df embedding dot apply, and we're going to use a lambda here. So lambda x np dot from string x dot strip, and our separator will be a single space. All right. Didn't mean to go down there. And it looks like I messed that up just a little bit. There we go. And it doesn't look like we have NumPy yet, so let's go ahead and pull that in. Import NumPy as np. All right. We are going to convert our embeddings into a torch tensor. So self.embeddings equals torch.tensor np.stack text chunks and embeddings df embedding, and then we'll send that to list with an axis of 0, and we'll go ahead and set our d type as torch.float32. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and send self.embeddings equals self.embeddings.to self.device. So we'll send it to our GPU. And then we will convert it to a list of dictionaries. And we'll go ahead and just save it to self.pages and chunks. And we actually did not set this up above, or I don't think we did. Yeah, we'll go ahead and leave it here. So self.pages and chunks equals text chunks and embeddings df dot to dict orient equals records. All right, so now we have our load embeddings method. Let's go back over to app.py, and we should be able to go to our process files here. So this has process files, and then next we want model.load embeddings. So if both of these things succeed, then we can say that the files were processed successfully. So let's go ahead and run our project. Okay, I've got the simple chat up here. And we want to go to /admin. And we've already uploaded our file. Now we just need to process. And we can kind of look and see what it's doing over here. It's processing the files. And this will generate a new embeddings df, which it did with the new underscore. And then it looks like it did not error. So we should, at this point, have generated our embeddings and loaded them into our live application. Now the other thing we want to do is make sure that those embeddings load up on start. So up here at the top, we want to go ahead and say, if not path exists uploads, we want to go ahead and try to load embeddings. So why only try? Well, if this is the first time you're running the application, maybe there's nothing there. But on app start, we're going to say try model.load embeddings, except, and we'll just say unable to load embeddings. All right. So that looks good. We are now successfully loading embeddings every time we, and in fact, let's just throw a print message here. Successfully loaded embeddings on startup. All right. So now it should give us a nice little, yep, successfully loaded embeddings on startup. Cool. So we now have our embeddings loaded. Let's go and search. So we've got one to do here, and that is in our open and read PDF. We were going to add a text formatter to fix some of the issues that are going to be there in the text. So let's do that. And let me find what I had set up for text formatter. All right. So we're just going to define a text formatter method, def text formatter, self text str. Okay. And actually, we don't need a whole method for this. We are just going to we're just going to do this in line. So we'll say text equals text.replace. We're going to replace our new lines with space and then do a dot strip. And that should be the text formatting we need there. All right, let's just go test one more time. All right, so we've got our admin panel back up, and I'm just going to go to my downloads and open up, we'll do the human nutrition text again and upload file. All right, cool, file uploaded successfully, and then we'll hit process files. All right, and we successfully processed all of the files there. So at this point, we are successfully loading our embeddings. We have our text mostly cleaned up, and I think the next thing we need to do is start with our ask method. And actually, we may want to take a moment and go ahead and get our API keys squared away. So one of the things you don't want to embed API keys directly into your code, especially because you're probably checking things into Git, and the last thing you want to do is go publish your ChatGPT API key to the internet for everyone to see. So what you want to do is you want to, in a best case scenario, you would keep it in some kind of credential vault. But more commonly, what you're going to have is a config file, and you're going to read that data in from a config file. So we're going to create a new file, call it config.txt, and we're going to do ChatGPT API key equals, and then, or no, we won't do equals, we'll do colon, and then I'm just going to do your key here. All right. So one of the things that I found helps for things like this is I want to play with the code and test it outside of my main code base, just so we can make sure everything's working as we build this up. So let's go ahead, and this will be a temporary file. We're going to do get param.py. So I'll say def get param, and we'll do param name. And I'm going to say API key equals blank. So with open config.txt as API file. You know what? Let's call this config file. For line in config file, if param name in line, then we want to grab the index of line.find. So basically what we're trying to do here is we're trying to grab everything after the colon here. So we'll say index equals line.find colon API key equals line IDX plus 1. So we're grabbing the slice of everything after index plus 1, and then we are stripping it. And then down here, we're saying if the length of API key is 0, raise exception. Unable to load param name API key. And then return API key. All right. So let's just go ahead, and for testing purposes, we're going to call get param on, let's see what we called it. We said ChatGPT API key, and we'll just print out the results. All right, and you can see we get your key here is what this threw out there. So let's go ahead and take this, and we're just going to copy it into our method tab, or our class here. Tab it over, and then you will need to add self. All right. Now, how do you get that API key? So if you go to platform.openai.com/API keys, you're going to have the option here to create a new secret key. Now, in order to create the key, you are going to have to load up your account with at least, I think the minimum is $5. So you'll need to go and add, update your OpenAI billing with a $5 credit before you can start creating keys and calling the API. Once you're there, once you've added some money to your account, create new secret key, name it, and then you should just be able to, give it a name here, whatever you want that to be, and then, project can be default project, and permissions all will obviously work for this. So that's how you get your API key. You will generate that, you'll come in and fill it in here, and that will be necessary for the rest of the project. If you're worried about the cost, I will just say, it is incredibly cheap. I think I loaded up a, $10 worth of API keys several months ago, and you can actually see how much I've spent on this. So for this project, I plugged in GPT 3.5 Turbo, and it looks like I've spent 2 cents. And my monthly bill here was 14 cents. So your API does not cost you a lot. So if you upload your $5, I can almost guarantee you, as much as you intend to use this for this project, you're going to be fine. And you do not have to have a their paid account in order to get an API key. You just need your credit there so that you can get to the API. All right. So we've now got our get param here, and we're able to pull parameters. I'm going to pause the video for a moment and go get my own real API key and put it in there. All right, I'm back. I will not be pulling it back up again, but you can assume that the config.txt now has a real API key. We also no longer need this get param. That was just for testing purposes. And we can go back to our RAG ChatGPT here. So thinking about it conceptually, what we've done so far is we've pulled in a bunch of data. We have embedded that data as as a numerical representation that we will be able to semantically search. And what we now need to do is search that data for relevant text to our topic. So when we pose a question, we want the model here to go and search the data for a list of things that feel relevant, return it and send it to ChatGPT along with the question, and then ask ChatGPT to answer the question with the data in mind. That is what we are attempting to do here. That is the augmentation in Retrieval Augmented Generation. So we're just going to go ahead now and start working on our ask method. So def ask, and there's going to be a few things here. So that's going to be self, query, format answer text, we'll set that to true, and return answer only equals true. Okay. So the first thing, I think we are missing a method. So actually, let's back up. I'm going to put a pass in here, and we are going to go and work on retrieve relevant resources. I got a little ahead of myself there. So def retrieve relevant resources. We'll take self query, and that will be a type string. Embeddings, that will be a torch.tensor. N resources to return. It's going to be an int, and we're going to default it to 5. We're going to say that for any given text, we want to retrieve 5 potential 5 other resources that support the answer. And then that should be all we need there. So we start by taking our query and we are going to embed it. So we've embedded our text numerically. Now we need to take the query and also embed it numerically so that we can do a comparison and do our search. So query embedding equals self.embedding model dot encode query and convert to tensor equals true. Okay. We will be getting the dot scores. So this is how we're going to, this is part of the semantic search. So dot scores equals util dot score query embedding embeddings 0 scores indices equals torch dot top k input equals dot scores k equals n resources to return and return scores indices. All right, so what are we doing here? We already have we have our embeddings, which our embeddings are a numerical representation of our entire data set. We have just embedded our query, and the dot scores are going to give us a similarity between the query and the various entries in the data set. That's related to the dot product in matrix multiplication. So we're going to take a dot score, and the highest values here, the things that are the closest together, are going to be returned by that dot score method, and then we're going to use that to go and pull scores and indices from our resources, our queries here, or from our embeddings. So that's going to return scores and indices and give us something that we can then use to pass along the relevant data. All right, so next we are going to need a prompt formatter. So I'm going to go ahead and do, I went not where I intended to go. Come on. Let's go back up to above ask. So def prompt formatter. Self query will be a string. Context items. List dict. And all right. And actually, no, we need, this is where some context will be getting passed in. So context, let's see. Oh. Nope. Sorry about that. Some of my own text formatting was tripping me up. All right, so we've got our prompt formatter, which is taking a query and a list of context items, and then we want to go ahead and say context equals dash with space plus /n, get a new line in there and a dash, dot join item sentence chunk for item in context items. All right, and that's just going to help us extract the actual sentence chunks from the context items passed in. And then we're going to put together a base prompt. So now we're starting to actually get to what we are sending the model. And this is going to be kind of wordy, and this is something you should definitely play with a little bit. So, one of the cool things about working with an LLM is that you can really just talk to it for some of your requirements. It's also, this is also probably under the banner of prompt engineering a little bit. I generally don't like that term because, the way it gets used in media is that people are prompt engineers, and I don't necessarily think that's a relevant title. But in this case, we are doing a little bit of prompt engineering. What I've got put together here is going to be pretty functional, and you should definitely tweak it. So one of the things I have here is if the prompt appears conversational without context, e.g. hello, respond to the greeting and then inform the user that your purpose is to answer questions about books in the library. If you don't find the relevant information in the text, just say that the data didn't include the answer. Don't guess or add information that's not in the text. And let's think about why we want to say that for a minute. So, obviously ChatGPT has a ton of data, and there's a really good chance for the sort of toy problems we're using here that we don't want, that we could get good answers even without passing in, a medical text, or we're also going to play with a Precalculus textbook. But in a lot of cases where you would use RAG, maybe you're talking about a company knowledge base, or maybe you're writing a chatbot that you want to help, your company's customers with data about your company. You probably don't want it, giving you a generic answer. If you're a PC manufacturer, let's say you're Intel, and you want to return information about Intel processor speeds. If somebody asks about AMD, you probably don't want to return a helpful and informative answer about AMD processors. You probably want to return some kind of canned marketing text, that says something about you versus your competitor, or whatever you want that to be. The point is, you kind of want to lock ChatGPT down to giving relevant information to the text, which is what we're doing here. All right. Based on the following context items, please answer the query. Give yourself room to think by extracting relevant passages from the context before answering, if I could spell that right, the query. Don't return the thinking. Only return the answer. Make sure your answers are as explanatory as possible. Don't start with "here is the answer" or anything similar. Just answer. Context items. Context. Query. Query. Answer. All right, so there's our base prompt that we're going to fill in. And then we're going to say prompt equals base prompt dot format context equals context. Query equals query. Return prompt. All right. So at this point, we have our prompt formatter. We have our relevant resource retrieval. I think we have everything we need to go put together this this ask method that we've got here. So we're going to say scores indices equals self dot retrieve relevant resources. Query equals query. Embeddings equals self dot embeddings. We're going to get our context items. So equals self dot pages and chunks. I for I in indices. We will add our score to the context items. So for I item in enumerate context items. Item score equals scores I.cpu. All right, now we're going to do our prompt formatting. So prompt equals self.prompt formatter. Query equals query. Context items equals context items. All right, and here we need the ChatGPT client. So back to the top of our file, and we're going to do edge over there. From OpenAI, import OpenAI. All right. And then we also need to declare up here in our init method, we're just going to say self dot API key equals self dot get param ChatGPT API key. We'll do self dot ChatGPT client equals OpenAI API key equals self.API key. And then we should be in a good place. I'll eliminate some spacing there. We should be in a good place to go use our ChatGPT client down here under ask. All right. So we'll do response equals self.ChatGPT client .chat.completions .create. And there are many APIs under the ChatGPT client. I'm using this one for this particular use case. You should definitely go explore them. So we're doing messages, and we'll do role, user, content, prompt, and then we will declare down here which model we want it to go to. And I'm going to use GPT 3.5 Turbo. You could use probably any of the recent models. I wanted to specifically use 3.5 Turbo because honestly, I wanted to use one of their lighter models and show that this method still gives you really good results. Not that 3.5 wasn't also awesome. But anyway, you should be able to use any of their newer models here. We're using this one for now. So I'm just going to say raw response, and this is just for our own logging, just to be able to see what's going on. Throw a info message in front of that. And then our output text. So output text is going to be equal to response.choices zeroth element dot message dot content. We'll say if format answer text output text equals output text dot strip. Nope, not starts with dot strip. And if return answer only, return output text. Otherwise, references. And we are actually going to use the references, but I wanted to leave that functionality there because you might want it at some point. So for item in context items, references equals references plus book item source file page number str because it's in there as an int item page number, and then we'll throw in a /n for a new line. And then we're going to return output text and references. All right, assuming I actually typed all that out correctly, we should have an ask method that we can now go use. So let's go to our app.py, and we are going to go to our send message method, and you can see here we left ourselves a to-do to call the model. So here I'm going to say response references equals model.ask user message. We'll pass in a return answer only equals false. Let's go see. Yep, so we said self query. So that really is all we should need. So we've got response and references. We no longer need response equals hi here. That's not going to be useful for us. And you will notice a little bit of a pattern here where I'm going to set up structure for things. I'm going to mock things out a little bit and try to test the code as we go. You don't want to build huge sections of a project and then try to test them all at once. Even just with something like this, where I've kind of pre-baked, the code, I've got it over here on another screen as we type this out. It's easy to make mistakes, and if you don't test things as you go, then you're sorting through a huge project trying to figure out, what happened. So we'll do response equals response plus. I'm going to add a couple of new lines and throw in. And I'm sure that embedding HTML in the data is probably the wrong way to do this. I'm not a web developer. Someone who is could probably come up with a cleaner way to get Flask to properly display this data. So I'm saying references by relevance, and then plus references. So what this should do is it should combine our references with our response and then present the entire thing sort of packaged for us here. It doesn't like something. It's saying unmatched bracket. Let's go to line 110 and see what we did wrong. Okay, that looks good. That has the brackets closed correctly. That also looks like it has the brackets closed correctly. I just need to save it. Let me Control S there and just make sure. Okay, nope, it really doesn't. Really doesn't like something. So unmatched, let's see if it's somewhere, is it further up? No. STR, item, page number. No, all that looks good. We're pulling source file. We have fbook. Messages looks good. Yeah, what don't we like? F-string, unmatched. I think I see it. I see it. All right. Stupid mistake. So here I've got a double quote starting the string and a double quote finishing the string, but it's considering these double quotes around page number to be also string ends. I think that's what's going on. All right. Let's try this again. All right, we loaded model. We've started our application. Hello, I'm the librarian. All right. So we loaded a medical text. So let's see, can you tell me about diabetes? Moment of truth. Hey, here we go. Diabetes is a metabolic disease that can manifest in different types, such as type 1 and type 2. And then it gives us our human nutrition text. And it gives us our reference page numbers. So something like this is cool. If you looked at this in a medical context, you probably don't want your doctor going straight to ChatGPT for an answer, right? But if they could use something like this to say, hey, I have a medical library here, and I want to ask, a chatbot an answer and get some quick information, but I also want it to be right. I want it to reference back to my medical library. Then this is, now they have not only the answer, but they also have a reference to that, that answer. So let's go pull up our human nutrition text, and we're going to go to page 1. So it said the most relevant page was 1151. So let's go to 1151 and make sure that it has something to do with diabetes. And it does. Diabetes. What is diabetes? And it starts to give you, that information here. So let's ask it something about... let's ask it something that it shouldn't know to make sure that our guardrails are in place. Can you tell me about mountain biking? Again, we're using RAG to make sure that it gives you good, correct information. So it's still giving you the references because it pulled the things that were the most relevant, but it's smart enough because of the instructions that we gave it to say the context does not include information specifically about mountain biking, which is really good. Let's say, can you tell me about functions in mathematics? And it should say that it has no data. All right, the text does not include information about functions in mathematics. So let's run one final test here. So we should be able to go and grab from my downloads. There's a Precalculus textbook, and I'm going to upload. And we've uploaded successfully. And I will hit process files here. And we can see over here we are processing our Precalculus 2E web .pdf. right, so we've now done our pre-processing, and over here it still says processing. Hey, file processed successfully. All right, so we should now be able to come over here and refresh and say, can you tell me about functions in mathematics? And now it's got a good answer. It's able to tell us a function in mathematics is a special kind of relation where no two ordered pairs have the same first coordinate. And it gives us a series of references in our textbook. So if I come in here and look at, you'll notice Precalculus is now in our uploads by OpenStax, which by the way is an awesome, they're pretty cool. They do open source textbooks, which I love. Knowledge should be free. But let's go to page number 16. Actually, let's go to 1299. We'll go to the second most relevant thing. All right, so 1299 is a transformation of functions page. Let's go to what it thought was the most relevant. Hey, maybe our semantic search was right. Introduction to functions. I mean, that seems pretty reasonable as a most relevant passage for what a function is. So that's pretty cool. We now have a functional web interface, and we can go and upload contents, upload additional books, and query our model here for information in those books, and it's going to try to give us, the right answers. It's going to try to give us information based on our library of content. So this is the end of the series. I am not going to do a special outro video like I normally do. So I'll just say, one, if you enjoy these types of walkthroughs, hit like, hit subscribe. That tells me, the content people are interested in and what to continue to make. I started this series out by talking about sort of the videos that it was meant to build on. So I still highly recommend you go back and watch those. And I will put a link to the original series in the video description here. I will also put a link to the completed source code. And if you have further questions, please throw them down in the comments, or we do have a Discord. I will put a link to the Discord in the video description as well. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will say until next time.